Welcome to the Dementia Caregiver Talk Show, a podcast to help you navigate the senior care maze. Learn and laugh with us as we discuss creative solutions and ideas to common and uncommon dementia care challenges, and how to make sense of the senior care industry and options, even if you're not a professional. Hello, welcome to the Dementia Care Partner Talk Show. My name is Valerie, and I'm here with Teepa Snow, Dorothy Colby, and Joanne Westbrook. And we have a very interesting topic today, and it's how to provide support when physical resistance presents. That's a tough one, isn't it?
And unfortunately, right now in our culture, it's actually a very common event that people experience, and so they think that's normal rather than there's something wrong, and people start to expect people to strike out. And that really is the issue, because what people are signaling is, I either don't understand what you want me to do and what you're doing, I don't like what you want me to do and what you're doing, I am not going to do what you want me to do and you're doing. But what they're trying to do is communicate. And so how did it get to a place where they got physical? And the answer is, we missed our cues earlier on, because people don't just suddenly start getting physically resistive. Typically, there's been a lead up to that. And it also means we're probably too close, we're going too fast, or we're trying to be too much in control, and we let our agenda lead rather than the relationship develop.
You know, Teepa, one of the things that I have experienced recently within my own family, when somebody comes down to visit for the first time and they're not understanding what's going on, and the first thing they wanted to do was run up and grab, you know, my sister and give her this hug, and she was like, what are you doing? You know, the first resistance was because she came at her.
Yeah. And people miss that they're the ones that precipitate or start the whole thing, because they're trying to make a connection. And what they're missing is they may be wanting a connection, but the other person may not pick up on the cue, or may not recognize them, or may not accept the relationship at the level the other individual wants it at. So it's often a case of degree of intimacy. So we use the idea of, hey, it's Teepa, and putting your hand up near your face and offering your hand in a handshake, or at least opening your arms outward and turning a little sideways. So it's an offer of a relationship, not a demand for one. And I think that's the biggest mistake, is people don't give individuals living with dementia a chance to figure out what's going on before they keep going. And ultimately, the person's primitive brain starts getting really concerned about this level of getting in my space and doing things and saying things, and I can't listen to you and respond to you while you're doing all that. And so it would be like if, for instance, Dorothy's here, I'll try it with her. So Dorothy, what are we going to do today? What would you like to do? Because I came down to see you particularly. Oh, look at your hair. Oh, well, you got something in your hair, Dorothy. Here, let me. So now people are going to say, yeah, that's happened. And somebody tried to like smack me. And it's like, well, Dorothy was showing me with her words even that was too much. And then her hands came up to her head. You couldn't see it, but her hands came up to her head to say, whoa, 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 whoa. And I ignored that, and I kept trying to work my way around it. So a much better strategy is, hey, Dorothy. Hey. Oh, and I motion, and I go, oh, and then I motion on my own hair, and I say, and I point to her, and I say, you got something? Yeah, something. Hey, here, Matt. Yeah. And then what I do is I put my hand out, but I let her lean to me. So I know that she got the cue and she's okay with it. Did you get it? Did I get it? Yeah. Yeah, I got it. Good job. You did it. Nice work. You're welcome. Now, if we do it that way, we get a thank you rather than a smack, because the person was able to get what I did. And even though I didn't have all the skills of hand in her hand or something special, I paused and I waited and I made sure it was a partnership, not a caregiving or a loving, because you may not know that we deserve to love each other. So it's a tricky thing. And people get really frustrated when the person doesn't react the way they expect. And yet it's like, okay, well, they're not reacting how you expected. Let's pause here and figure out what might be driving that.
Yeah, I think they come in with their own agenda and they forget that that person is not the same, the way they don't behave the same way they used to. And that's kind of, they've lost that connection and she's got to reconnect with that.
Yeah.
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 So I like, what you said is like, go slow and give visual cues, and then, see and read the other person, their response before you just go and do something.
Yeah, so for every cue I give, there should be a response or a reaction. And I'm not really allowed to move forward until I figure out what that means. So I should be evaluating what's happening. And if I focus on paying attention to the other person, it can actually slow me down because I'm not so invested in getting something done. I start being curious about, did they get my cue? Oh, I think maybe they did. And the reason I hesitated there is I want people to start to appreciate how hard it is to hold time for someone, and yet how important it is to be willing to give them some time in the right places and spaces. So if I give you a visual cue, your brain has to see what I did, figure out what I did, understand what I did and how it relates to what they're doing, take that and transfer it over either to a verbal statement or a physical movement and do something back or say something back. So in that sequence, there's a lot of synaptic phenomena or connections that have to happen. And because of the damage in the brain, it could take a while, or they could miss a connection. It's really important that I pay attention if they're missing connection or it's just taking a while, because then just simply slowing down is the answer. But if they're missing connection, slowing down isn't going to do it. You can slow down, but you're going to have to do something else too, which means, okay, that cue didn't get there. Let me think, what's another cue, or do they need it a second time with more emphasis? Or do I need to go get an object to help them get it? Or do I need to step back so they can actually see what I'm trying to do? Or, should I do it beside them rather than do it to them? Should I try to take my sweater off rather than trying to get their sweater off as the first cue? To help them understand what I'm trying to do is get them out of that sweater and into another sweater. And so if I do it on myself and I do this and then Dorothy goes, no, I don't want it. I don't want to do that. Then I know the problem wasn't that she didn't get what I said and wanted, it's that she didn't want to do what I said.
And one thing I found kind of helpful for myself and also with family care partners and professionals too is to make a little practice time for connecting that way, even if it's social chit chat, but practice slowing yourself down and waiting without having that agenda, because it's hard to get, even if you put that agenda in your back pocket, it's still scratching at your brain, like, okay, well, how am I going to get through this before I can get to my, I gotta get that brief off Teepa. So just try that without the agenda at all to practice that skill. And then for professional care partners, you have so many different people, so many different gems. Everybody's rhythm and response time is different. So unlike a home care partner where you have one person you get to practice over and over, it takes more work for and time commitment for a professional care partner to really get to know the rhythm of each person's response rate. Yeah, because they're all different.
They are, and I can be different morning to night. Yes. So that really rehearsing that idea of, and does this person do better with,
right. Or even the most simple, the one that we learned first in PAC, which is I'm Dorothy, and you are just, wait, tired. Me too. It's been a long week.
It was one of my very favorite interactions I ever had was I did that with somebody and the lady said tired. And it was like, oh, wait, that was important information.
It was important.
She would be resistive if I didn't then go, oh, tired. Want to go to bed. And she went, yeah. And she immediately was willing to get up with me. And the reason I'd gone over to her is somebody had said, we can't get her out of the chair. And it was like, oh, well, that's because she thinks you want her to go do something. And so what I had to do is help her see that I was going to help her meet her need, which is she was tired. The only reason we're getting up is so she could go to bed. And then she just came right up out of the chair because she got it. So, you know, people say physical resistance, and I think what happens is we view that as a consequence of dementia rather than a consequence of what we do combined with dementia. And to own it means I have to look a lot in the mirror at myself and realize I might be causing somebody to feel out of control, to feel like they don't want me. And it feels like rejection. And that's very real. I mean, it does feel like I've been rejected. And it's important to realize, did you have an agenda? Maybe it was the agenda that was being rejected. So she didn't want a hug. It's maybe not that she doesn't want me at all, but she didn't want that physical intensity of a hug. Maybe she wanted just to see that I was an okay person before we got there. And so with the example of somebody from out of town, one of the things I recommend is maybe practicing how you're going to connect with me before you do it with my mom or before you do it with my sister, so that I can see what you think you're going to do. And we can go, oh, tell you what, here's what I want you to try this time. If you would, I want you just to try it because it seems like it's better for her. It's a lot better for her. And I know it's going to be hard. And then what I'll often do if their person is a hugger is give them a really big hug before they go greet the person so they get their needs met before they're trying to greet somebody who can't tolerate that level of need.
Right.
That's really smart. I love the idea of practicing because it's really, and you said it's a lot about becoming a detective.
Yeah.
Observing and then maybe trying things a little differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it's with Teepa, you're always taught everyone to use more visuals, and depending on the level where they are, I think if they're not comprehending the words that you're giving to them, then the visuals to me would make more sense of communicating that way.
Yeah. And it's a fairly, you know, it's sort of the idea of a visual comes in lots of ways. I could show you a picture. I could show you an object. I could take the object and use the object with myself as I would want you to use it, and then orient it and move it toward you so that your brain understands, okay, I did what I want you to do with the thing that I just handed you. But then I might also try hand under hand, offer my hand, and then with the object in the hand. Or I might offer either or by presenting two objects. Or I could bring a bingo chip or a bingo card to say where it is or what it is we're going to go do. So the person has an awareness when I come in, what is it I'm asking for? What is it I'm looking for? And that's why we always encourage people to put your hand up and then out so that people know what you're looking for is physical touch. And if you don't do a touch that's familiar, or they don't respond to a touch that's pretty familiar, like a handshake, it's very unlikely they're going to be really excited about a more intimate touch, like wiping someone's face or washing someone's body or trying to get someone's clothes off or trying to put a spoon in someone's mouth. And I think if our brain would just go, okay, well, let's think about this before we started doing something. And I always encourage people to be in the other seat. So tell you what, you sit down and let me approach you and let me do what you're doing, even without visual limitations, but just let me do what I saw and heard you do, and tell me how you're feeling. Because I think sometimes switching places is an incredibly powerful thing to do to help people realize sometimes it's about dementia, but sometimes it's just about the interaction and how we're doing the interaction. And so let's try it from the other side and see if your reaction, what do you think? And it's like, oh, well, you were way close. And it's like, well, I have to be in order to support you. And it's like, I don't care. You were just way close. And so the idea that we think we're being helpful and the other person thinks it's too intense, until you are on both sides of that, and that's why we call it peer partnering, until you are willing to take the other person's position, sometimes you can really misinterpret a sensory experience because you're only seeing your half of it and feeling your half of it.
That's another great tip, having somebody do it to you to really experience it yourself, because I think that can be entirely different, just sitting on the other side, and it allows you to see things from a different perspective
and feel them from a different perspective. And so I think when we talk about people being resistive and resisting us and striking out at us, I think we love to have that idea that it's them, not us. And I just really would love for us to finally get to a place in our culture of dementia care that we say, when we experience physical resistance, boy, did we step over a boundary marker that somebody felt was totally not okay. And so we are not allowed to do that until we figure out what triggered it the first time. Because until we figure that out, all we're going to do is reinforce the very thing we don't want to see. And it's like, okay, well, if they're resisting, giving them more opportunities to resist builds a memory, a motor memory that every time somebody does this is what I got to do to protect myself. And pretty soon it's what they do when anybody does anything, because their brains are not able to separate an okay thing from a not okay thing. So what was just about bathing could start to be about eating and moving and everything. And it's just like, well, it all started with a misinterpretation, but we reinforced it.
It's hard for the care partner, of course, for the person with dementia, that's all you can focus on. She hit me.
Yeah.
And you can't get past the smacked. So to be able to step back and walk yourself back, like, oh, okay, what happened right before that? What happened right before that?
How did my face get that close?
What did I say? Yeah.
How did she get that? Boy, I didn't expect her to be that quick. But I sort of knew she wasn't going to like it, but I thought and let's finish the sentence, I thought I could get away with it. I mean, and that's often what we don't want to say out loud is, I thought I could get it.
Be quick.
I just thought I'd get in there and get it done. And it's like, yeah, and she caught you, didn't she? And it's like, yeah, you didn't like the result. She didn't either, actually. So, it's that being willing to step back. I can remember Miss Jackson was mine, where she hit me with her Bible. Because I surprised her and she did. No, I was emblazoned with raised welts, the Holy Bible in reverse. And what was really important was that I had been insolent to her, and I didn't intend it to be that way, but she wasn't making sense, and I was very young, and I was very impulsive, and I thought I knew what I was doing, and I got right in her face, and I told her that we weren't going to do that. She was going to get cleaned up, and then we would do, and she showed me that I was quite mistaken, that we weren't doing it my way. And at the time, I just went and got somebody to give her medication, because I was very young. I was 18 years old, and I didn't know any better. It took me 2 weeks to realize what had actually happened. And what had happened was that she thought I was going to help her, because I typically helped her. And instead, when she really needed help, because she had actually what she ended up having is shingles. But I didn't know it, because she was just so not herself. And so I was trying to help get her cared for. And I was so focused on the care. And so I was trying to help get her cared for. And I was so focused on the cared for. And I thought she wasn't making any sense. What she was asking me to do, can you carry me to see Mr. Dukes? And I just said, well, we can't do that right now. We got to get you cleaned up. No, I need to go see Mr. Dukes. Carry me to see Mr. Dukes. And this was in North Carolina. And what that means and what it meant, and it took me 2 weeks to interpret her language, was I feel sick. We're in a little town north of Durham, North Carolina. When people up here get real sick, they go down to Duke University Medical Center. Will you take me in your car to get looked at because I think I'm sick? But I had no idea that's what she was talking about. It was just quote unquote crazy talk, because back then we didn't really get it. And it took me 2 weeks to get it. And then I felt real bad because what she was doing was trying to tell me what was wrong. And I just simply didn't have the skill to understand what she was saying.
A lot of times too, Teepa, you know how you can walk into a room and you can tell if somebody likes that person or doesn't like that person, because the emotional piece is held, right? So
yeah, my rule is I usually ask people, tell me one thing you still like about the person you're supporting and caring for, because if you can't, somebody needs to take a break, because it won't go well if you can't find something you still like about each other. And there's some research, and it was interesting. I was just at a workshop, I think in South Dakota, where a woman counselor, a well-known counselor out of California, cited research that said within 7 seconds, when you see someone, you know whether you think you like them or not. So you got 7 seconds to make a good impression. And if my first impression is, oh my heavens, what has she done now? It'll show, my heavens, what has she done now? It'll show, because what I'm showing you is I don't like, and the problem is I don't like what you did, but it looks like I don't like you. And so if I look at you like I don't like you, why should you look at me like, oh, wow, great, I can't hardly wait to be with you? And so I think really getting ourselves, also another practice sometimes is looking in the mirror. And how do you make yourself look pleasant, not grinning like I'm going to do something you don't like, but pleasant? How do I look neutral? How do I look positive, excited? How do I sound when I'm there? How does my rhythm voice sound? So all the things we can do to prepare ourselves and respond. So if Dorothy is not happy and she goes, you stop it or I'm going to smack you. So if she does that, I don't know if Dorothy can be, go ahead.
I'm going to smack you.
You're going to smack me.
You're going to smack me upside the head.
And that's called responsive language. So I took what she gave me and I didn't try to, now Dorothy, that's not me like that. If I do that, the very next thing Dorothy's going to do is smack me, because I won't, and finish it off, I won't listen to her.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
And so she's got to hit me because I'm not listening. It's sort of like, and in some ways, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, I sort of asked for it because I wouldn't listen to her. And instead of I listened to you, I got your message, you're not liking it. And then Dorothy's like, well, yeah. You got it. And the energy comes down, and then we can figure out you're not liking it. Yeah. Dorothy, look, feel on your cheek right here. You got something. Here, try that. There you, oh yeah, feel that. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here, now you do it.
Yeah,
right there. You got it. Yeah. Ow.
In the back.
In the back. Oh, wow. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. There we go. And so then it became something even more different, and that's called positive affirmation. Yeah. That rhythm. Yeah. It's like a cheerleader, but a really informed cheerleader, not just rah, sis, boom, bah, but somebody who gets what the person is trying to do and affirms them.
Those are some great actionable tips. And on that note, you're going to have a live webinar on that topic, right?
We are, and we're recording it. So if you can't come to the live webinar, you'll have a chance to watch it, listen to it later. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's on what, July?
July 23rd. It's, I think, 4 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for those that do join you live, they get to ask you questions too, right?
Yes.
Nice.
We do it on Zoom so people can participate. And I'll have somebody with me that day that will be able to demonstrate some things visually. And we'll also have some video clips of some events that are challenging, where somebody offered physical resistance, to sort of give us some live things to work from, and some resolution and some challenges, because we aren't approaching people often just because. We're approaching people in an effort to provide what we believe is much needed care. The real question is, do we need to do it right in that moment? Is it a crisis? Are they in danger? Or is it just our preferred time for getting it done? And that's part of what we'll be talking about as well, is, let's look at the gem state, let's look at our ability, let's look at the situation, and let's make an informed choice rather than a quick, impulsive decision, quote unquote, that leads us into the person resisting us.
And for our listeners, if you want to join that webinar, if you www.teepasnow.com, you can register for the webinar right there. And I will also put the link into the show notes of this podcast episode. You can find it there easily. And should you be listening to this episode after July 23rd and think, oh no, I really wish I wouldn't have missed it, no worries. You're going to be able to access the recording afterward, even at a later time. So thank you so much, Teepa and Dorothy and Joanne. I really appreciate it. I think our listeners got a lot of great takeaways on this one.
Thank you for doing it, and see you later.
Later, thank you.